We're so glad you've gathered with us this evening. If you'll allow me to step over here for a second. I'm hearing the telltale coughs of red tide. So I came prepared. So this one's already open. You want to pass that around? Oh. Red tide. Red tide is something that kills fish. It's an algae. But sometimes when the wind blows right, we usually haven't had this for 6 years, it'll cause you to cough. So it's not really bad for you unless you're really sensitive to it. But I could hear the cough starting to come a little bit, so we'll just keep passing those around. Last Sunday when we were here on the beach, I only brought a small bag and it was gone very shortly after we began. You know, it's great as we gather together on this night and we recognize what's happening. We celebrate Christmas when the King of Kings and Lord of Lords comes down to us, comes among us. I want to let you know that the title for this is, you know, A God for All, but I really thought originally of calling this a Redneck Christmas. I was talking to some people and they thought that might be offensive to some people, but I had lived in Texas growing up, San Antonio and Big Spring out in the west, but I was an Air Force kid, so I spent most of the times on the base, so I really didn't get to know the people around there. But after that, eventually my dad was assigned to Eglin Air Force Base, and I spent my high school years and early college years there. And I don't know if you know what that area was called back in the day, but the area of Fort Walton Beach and that coast was called the Redneck Riviera. And so I really got to know things about that, but I discovered something about people who think of themselves as rednecks, that even though some people may think it's derogatory in that, but for most people who are a redneck, it's a term of endearment. They are proud to be called a redneck. And I don't know about you, but you have to admit that this first Christmas was pretty redneck, right? Jesus was born in a barn, you know, laid in a feeding trough. You know, we picture the nativity scene all picturesque and all that way, but you got to remember there was a cow there, probably in the delivery room. Now that's got to be really redneck. You know, he grew up in a small hick town. Nazareth probably had no more than 300 people. It covered about 10 acres, okay? And it didn't have plumbing, so it had a lot of outhouses there. He was born to a poor, unwed, teenage mother, and instead of a doctor or a midwife to deliver him, a carpenter with rough hands delivered him. And the trip to Bethlehem was anything but a royal caravan. After all, it was 70 miles that he had to walk to get there. We think Mary may have been on the donkey, but we don't know for sure. We had hoped. Maybe we know she had a donkey when they went to Egypt. But at this time, we don't know. She may have walked the whole 70 miles while being very pregnant there. And when they get there, 5-star hotel waiting for them? No, not a bit. And he spends his first night in a feeding trough, a manger. And I think about this every year about why. Didn't God have enough time to prepare for this thing? To get all the details right? After all, God started from the beginning of time already thinking of this, and especially from the fall, that his son would come. And God, you'd think he would have all the details just right. But maybe the explanation comes with the shepherds. That passage that we had read there, Luke 2, and there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks by night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them. The glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all people." Now, in the New Testament times, shepherds were not highly regarded. In fact, they were considered religiously unclean during that day. They weren't allowed to be witnesses in court cases in that way. They were synonymous with being dirty and smelly. You know, it seemed unthinkable at a time that the Messiah would come and the first people he would show up to are these unclean, smelly shepherds. The wise men came much later. It was the shepherds who came to the manger on on that first night with that teenage girl and their carpenter. And they didn't even take a bath first. Didn't go change their clothes. They just show up as they are, and they're the first ambassadors for Jesus, the smelly, dirty shepherds as they go out and share the good news of Christ's birth. And I think if we look at verse 10, we're going to see why. Because what the angel says in verse 10 at the very end of it, that Jesus was for all people. For all people. Not just for the church-going types, not just for those of us who have secure jobs and healthy families, but for all people. In that first Christmas, God wanted to make a big statement about what he was going to be doing. That Jesus isn't just for the elite, he's for everyone. Jesus is for all the people. Now, I know some of you came here and looked and wondered what this guy was doing here in this. I usually don't. Some of you who know me, Lydia and a few others, this is really even dressed down for me. I'm usually pretty casual here on the beach, but this is really actually kind of grimy. And I kind of wore these. These are my work pants, and this is my work shirt that I used to go out there. And if you didn't pay attention to it when you came here and just thought it was okay, blessed be your tribe, may your numbers increase. But maybe you noticed a little bit and you thought, boy, that's a little odd. He's dressing like that, but you didn't think too much of it. Now, some of you may have looked and said, surely this guy's going to get out of the way and the regular guy's going to come up in that, because this is really kind of inappropriate. And there were some of you who might even be offended. After all, it's Christmas. Shouldn't I wear my Christmas best, even if it's casual on Christmas? But I did want to make the point that on the first Christmas, everything and everyone was out of place. It wasn't the way it was supposed to be. He was born in a stable, put in a feeding trough. He's announced to shepherds. That's not how it should be. And for the churchgoers, the religious elite of that day, it would have seemed out of place to them too. It would have seemed wildly inappropriate. In fact, to most of them, it would probably have been offensive to that. But God so loved what? The world. He loved the whole world, so the gift was for that. I would think about this. If the religious elite, the Sadducees and the Pharisees had showed up for that, do you think they would have been unimpressed by the baby in the manger? Do you think they would have been distracted by the smells and the surroundings around them in those unkempt shepherds? The point here, I'm going to say to you, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter how you look, no matter where you're from, the Jesus of the cradle and the cross is for you. I'll say that again. No matter who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter how you look, no matter where you're from, the Jesus of the cradle and the cross is for you. You know, I was thinking about this. Somebody's talking through this, and they said, you know, you should share a few things. I got a couple things to share, and I said, okay, what are those? He said, did you ever realize that there are lots of things out there that should be for everybody, but don't seem to be? They seem to be only targeted, marketed for a few people. I found about this. Have you ever heard of Bling H2O? It's water, but it's in a really blingy bottle. Okay? It's ordinary water. This is what their thing is. Let me just, it's more than a pretty taste. This is their slogan. Bling H2O is pop culture in a bottle. It's not for everyone, just for those that bling. Ordinary bottled water is for ordinary people, but for those who have a taste for the finer things, Bling H2O may be the perfect thirst quencher. Sure, it comes with bottles with jewels on it or rhinestones and things like that, but a bottle of Bling H2O starts at $50 a pop. And the high-end bottles of water, $500. So it's not for everybody, is it? It should be, but it's not for everybody. I saw another product, and it's toilet paper. Renovo toilet paper. And here's their ad. Elegant, sophisticated, alternative, and eternally fashionable. Black toilet paper isn't for everyone. It is synonymous with sophistication and style. Why waste your time with last season's last season's 2-ply white when you can feel cellulite free chin tone tush to stylish black? Anybody want to guess how much a roll costs? How much? No, it's a lot cheaper than that. That might be a case of it. But a roll, $15 a pop, going up from there. I would say that is flushing money down the toilet when you say that. Now, would it be easy for when Jesus was born for the religious elite to say, he was born for us? After all, we were the ones waiting for the Messiah all these years. He came for the Jews. He came just for that. We've been waiting for him. That's our present. But Jesus makes it clear from the very beginning, and it's expressed by Paul, that in him there is no Jew nor Greek, no slave nor free, no male nor female. From the beginning, Jesus wanted you to know, whether it's a king bringing a gift of gold or if it's a shepherd bringing nothing, he's there for you. Now, there are a couple things also that Jesus would like to say. I think if he was here to speak to us, he'd say, one, no matter what you're going through, I know what it is. I know what it's like. You see, Jesus wasn't born as into princesses, he was born in a stable. He was born to that. And why did he do that? Because Jesus didn't want to accept himself from any of the challenges that you and I face. Every hardship we face, Jesus has faced. Hebrews 4 says, because Jesus walked on this earth, we now have a high priest in heaven, Jesus, who's a high priest who sympathizes with us in our very weaknesses. If you're struggling financially, Jesus would say, I know what that's like. I was poor. If you don't seem to catch a break, always getting the short end of the deal, he might say to you, I know what it's like. I was born and laid in a feeding trough. If your family doesn't really support you, this time of year is kind of a bummer because of that. Jesus will say, my brothers and sisters and my mother didn't even really know what I was about in my ministry. Maybe you've got a friend who's let you down in this holiday season. Jesus will say, I know what that's like. When I needed them most, my friends abandoned me and left me. So if you feel you've been untreated, realize that Jesus was sentenced unfairly to a violent death. He lived the perfect life, so he knows what it's like to be in this. I think another thing he wants to say to us is, no matter what you've done, I still love you. No matter what you've done. He could have gone from heaven to a palace, but he comes all the way down as low as he can. Why? Because he wants to know the extent of his love. You see, the greater the sacrifice, the greater the love. It's true in our regular lives, and it's very true in Jesus. It says in Philippians that he made himself nothing. There was no lower point that he could go than the babe in the manger than it was to the cross of Calvary, where he suffered and did that for us and gave us a gift, that cross. I was a youth minister for 25 years, so I had a lot of kids that I worked with. And I remember this one kid, he came up to me one day and he said, it's the end of the year and I heard about this deal and I'm going to go buy me a truck. It says right here, you go get it. Just walk in and you'll get it. So, he was like just out of high school and had his friends drop him off and he went around and picked out the truck and then he sat down with the salesman and the salesman started to have him fill out the forms. And as he filled it out, the guy started to get a little feeling of dread. Those credit forms you have to fill out to get the loan? And the guy ran the credit check, and of course the guy was turned down. And I asked him, why did you think you were going to be able to get that loan? Didn't you know that you had to be approved? And I said, no, where does it say that? It says WAC, or WAC, with approved credit. And he said, no, I thought it was whacked. Man, this is a whack deal. No, it's with approved credit, and he didn't have the credit for it. When it comes to our holy God, none of us have the credit. In fact, ours is pretty bad. It never gets to be what it needs to be. So Jesus said, here's what I do. I'll give you a great trade, okay? I'll take your credit score, you take mine. And that's the gift. So at this Christmas, it's for us to realize that God did love the world so much that he gave us his only son, that whoever would believe in him would not perish but have eternal life. Why? Because we get credited with Jesus. So my prayer is that this would be a place where everybody would be able to see a little bit of Jesus in each of us. Because you may be a redneck, you may be young, you may be old, you may be single, you may be single and wanting to be married, you may be married, maybe you're married and wanting to be, no, I hope not. Maybe you're divorced, maybe you're widowed, maybe you're living on food stamps, or maybe you're living off a trust fund. Maybe you've got a PhD, or maybe you're still working to get your GED. Maybe you wear suits and ties, or maybe you prefer jeans and t-shirts. You could be a Republican or Democrat. You could like rock music, rap music, or country music. You're Baptist, you're Baptist, Catholic, Methodist, Lutheran, whatever it is. But Christmas is still for you. Shepherds and kings alike. Jesus is for everybody. Because don't miss out on it. This day, people are celebrating the birth of Jesus in the underground church. In places where they are persecuted, they're celebrating that. It's celebrating by children I know in orphanages in Haiti, who are there with bright faces, in the remote jungles of Africa, in addiction and recovery centers, in prisons. All those areas, the Christ of Christmas is still coming. So, let's realize this Christmas should be a surprise. And I want you to see that humble stable. I want you to sort of in your nostrils smell the smell of those animals around there and the odors that they make. As you're listening to the babies cry, hear the sheep and the goats bleat. It's not what you expect for the King of Kings. That sort of thing in your mind, crawling next to it on bended knee, to that child that's there. And realize that as you're facing him, no matter who you are or what you've done, no matter how you look or where you're from, Christ, the cradle, and the cross is for you. As the angel said, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all people. A Savior has been born. He is Christ the Lord. Let's pray.